Alex.
Jason, part 2 of the upper limit problem.
Yeah, there's a great story, and we'll start off in the beginning about this doctor on the feeling fundamentally flawed upper limit.
Yeah, give me
and Dr. Richard Jordan,
story
he had created
time.
this successful small business that attracted the attention of this larger firm, of course. Mm-hmm. And they were going to offer him $3 million.
Okay.
So they're in negotiations. And then on part of the negotiations was there was 2 weeks less. He was still going to remain the CEO, but there was 2 weeks less vacation for him. So he blew up and then sent this nasty email, which in turn caused them to say this. They wrote him back. Due to the force of your remarks, they were no longer interested in acquiring the business. So, but see, he was fixing to become a $3 millionaire.
Yeah.
And he hit his upper limit problem feeling fundamentally flawed. That I'm not good enough for the 3 million. So he self-sabotaged himself over something. He didn't even ask them like in a nice way. You know, I would prefer to have 2 more weeks of vacation.
Yeah.
Because they probably went, oh, okay. No, they're negotiating.
He let negative thoughts start to roll.
Yes.
And then something that is so unimportant. Take the 3 million, be a CEO for a year and leave if that's what you want. Mm-hmm. If you want more vacation, then go do it. You know, hire someone to take over your role for your extra 2 weeks you lost. Like, don't be so ridiculous.
But he did that on purpose.
Yeah.
His mind did that on purpose to.
Well, he's trained himself over time to react like that.
Yes.
There's no control over the thoughts. There's a German word for it called Ausertung. And what it means is that things continue to spiral deeper and deeper out of control. So it gets into this bad state. And so what we find is sometimes when we don't control our thoughts, then the emotions start to roll and we lose our center, like our equalizeness, and we start to spiral into the state of Ausertung, which is like, I just continue to get into a bad state of affairs and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then we'll project it out all the time. He made himself, and this will bridge you to the next thing. He made himself a victim because they said, we're not going to give you the 2 weeks. So he felt victimized that someone stripped away this like 2 weeks of vacational freedom for the man.
Yes. Yes.
Did he not?
Yeah, and I think it's even more important than that, in that the sense of when we hit these upper limit problems, when we're feeling like we're experiencing success, and then we get to that point, and this can be in a relationship, it can be in anything, and then we're like, no, this is going too well, I'm done. And we talked a little bit more about that in part 1, and I encourage people to listen to that one about what an upper limit problem is. Yeah. But let's get into the third and the fourth one, because I think these are great. Hidden barrier number 3 is believing that more success makes you a bigger burden.
Okay, believing that more success makes you a bigger burden. So first one we want to tackle is belief. And that's a really good word because he's accurately describing that you don't have the facts. You're not living truthfully. You're living in a state of assumption. That's what belief is. You have to like receive info from people without actually finding the truth behind it. And so if you're saying, that more success, I believe that that's going to be more of a burden for the people around me or even myself. I don't want to chase that.
Right.
That's not what I want to do. Well, how do you know that? There's a lot of people that have become more and more successful and simplified their lives.
Yes. Success allows you to do that.
Success gives you...
True success.
Yeah, true success, emotional success, success in the evolution of your consciousness, and material success, if used properly, can really allow your life to be a lot more stress-free. Maybe it allows you, having more money that you can hire other people to do tasks you shouldn't be doing, and you can spend that time to meditate or read or travel or get that 2 weeks of vacation you lost.
Yeah, this barrier is the feeling that I cannot achieve my highest potential because I'd be an even bigger burden than I am now. This barrier held one of the biggest challenges for him, the writer.
Yeah, a burden.
So this was the writer's.
Yeah, like I'm not worthy enough in myself to become the leader that I'm supposed to be.
Right. So when he was born, this is the author, Gay Hendricks. When I was born, I was greeted with 2 mixed messages. You're a burden and you're a celebration. I was a burden to my mother, but a cause of celebration to my grandparents. My father had died a few weeks after my conception, leaving my mother with $300.
Interesting.
My older brother to raise and me in the womb. So his whole life started with his mom's negative energy of a combination of burden and celebration.
So that polarizing dynamic, and he continued to carry his mom's negative thoughts
right
with him across the majority of his life, so that when he started to move towards things of success, he took the position of the burdensome nature of how he thought he was born and brought into this world through his mother's own stressors and unknowledge, and then applied it to his own life. He was restricting his growth. He creates this upper limit because he has this false idea or image, again, of the mother saying this is how he should live his life.
Right.
That characteristically, you're just a burden. When true, in the absolute truth, he's no burden to anybody.
Yeah, he said, but the guilt I felt for being a burden was for crimes I hadn't committed.
Yeah, exactly. He's taking on this, it's a self-sabotage and also like a martyr. And it's like a false empathy for his mother at the same time.
Yes.
He's got an interesting dynamic and combination that we're destroying, from a mental state, his self-value, him valuing himself.
Yeah, and you can imagine, and he would talk about this, I know, openly, but you can imagine how this would play out in his relationships.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, it would be, I'm the martyr in the relationship, like you had said. I'm the one that my self-esteem or self-worth is not, equivalent to you. Oh no, I'm doing well in my job. It's going to take time away from my wife, and she's not going to feel that, I'm making her a priority. Mm-hmm. How it could just,
and then just begins
worry,
to
worry,
steamroll,
guilt,
anxiety, fear, guilt.
Right.
All those wonderful little things begin to creep in.
Yeah, he said this. This is really interesting. I want you to talk about this. If we remove the guilt of the crimes our parents and siblings convicted us before we walk into kindergarten, we are liberated from the upper limit problem. Do you like how he said that the crimes our parents have convicted us of and siblings?
Well, it's interesting because he says convicted.
Yes.
But innocent until guilty, right?
Yes.
You're naturally innocent. But they've convicted you of a crime, but you really haven't committed any crimes. But that, at a fundamental level, when there's so much rich development happening in the life of a child at that point,
right?
That's not when you want to be hammering them with that negativity or stunting their growth emotionally or consciously. Mm. When I think about it, you have a lot of like helicopter parents.
Yes.
And the child goes to do something, it begins to explore or play around with, whatever shit in the kitchen, hopefully not a knife, but, they want to make a mess and do things. That's creativity coming through. It's learning. But a lot of these people say, stop, don't do that. Or stop, that's risky. Rather than taking the time to work through it and explain the risks and the dynamics, they just shut everything down altogether.
Right.
So they don't appreciate the growth and the train of thought that this sovereign being, even though it is so much younger in a state of development, they're not appreciating that it is its own thing. So respect its learning and how it wants to learn and work with it rather than just shut it down, because at a fundamental level, it's going to play off to some sort of convicted crime that I can't do these things, right? I can't take these risks. I can't be who I truly am because the family said I acted this way, or, I feel like I am a burden, or I need to stop what is going so good for me right now because I've seen how that played out in the past. What I thought was good, Mama Bear, shut it down. Right. Don't be playing with the rolling pin or whatever.
Instead of looking at it as a teaching moment, if the child comes to you and they're crying, maybe they're getting, bullied by someone or whatever it may be, maybe they're going to, middle school or kindergarten and they keep having these people. That's a learning moment for you to let them see, for you to teach them who they are inside and who that other person is inside. Yeah. And then from there, it's amazing when you ask kids questions.
Well, yeah, when you start being Socratic with the kid.
Yes. Yeah. They can come up, a lot of times they can come up with their own answer that best suits them.
And you also it teaches them how to reason.
Yes.
Which is a great tool.
Oh, yeah. That we don't have nowadays.
And when you have that deep sense of reasoning when you're younger and you continue to foster that, it allows you to break through whatever those barriers might be. Because then you recognize that's not reasonable. That's not a reasonable way to think or act. I won't do that.
Yes.
It sits out of reason, out of logic. It's not truly beneficial and it does not align with who I am.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, I think, especially on this fourth hidden barrier, that you may think of it in the beginning. I was thinking of it as like, who would have this one? But then I began to think about scenarios and situations, and then it became alive to me. And this one is the crime of outshining. The unconscious mantra of the outshining barrier goes like this: I must not achieve my full success, because if I did, I would outshine someone and make him or her look or feel bad.
Okay. You know what this reminds me of? Like if I am going out to dinner, I don't go very often. So, I like getting dressed up.
Right.
But it's like it's It's a casual place. And it's like, well, yeah, it may be a little much for like the party. You know what I mean? I'm going to wear it anyway.
Right.
I'm not worried about outshining. This is just who I want to be. You know what I mean? I'm not going to stop myself from looking my best because people are dressing in a casual state.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
I'm just thinking as like a metaphor.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's perfect. Like at work, it's like, well, I can get this done in an hour and I could do this and this, but then I'm going to make Bill and Susan look bad.
Well, it's not about making Bill and Susan look bad. If they were responsible and good at their job, they would have gotten it done.
Right.
And they would have done it efficiently. So if I need to take care of it and go do it, just go do it. But don't say, oh, look what I did. Look how I did it so quickly. And then gloat in this thing.
Right.
Just do what needs to be done. Go do it and have at it. But don't, consider the idea of outshining someone and then be like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. It's going to make them look bad.
Yeah. He says this barrier is very common among gifted and talented children. They get a lot of their parents' attention, but they also get a strong subliminal message. Don't shine too much or you'll make others feel bad or look bad.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he said one unconscious solution that gifted children devise is to turn down the volume on their genius so others don't feel threatened by it. That's a very important statement.
I'm not saying I'm a genius or I'm anything intelligent, but my grandfather had a significant influence on me. And he always said, when you walk into a classroom, make sure you know more than the teacher. It wasn't even like a thing of ego. It just says, make sure you know more. And it just like forced me to study and continue to foster that thirst for knowledge. Like, don't hold back. Don't wait for them to tell you what the answer is. Know it ahead of time.
Yeah, you were given this gift and ability to impact humanity. So if you're sitting there and you're filtering it down so that you don't want to outshine or be seen, you're depriving humanity of that unique gift and ability that only you, fully flourished, can work.
Oh, that was really nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I mean, because I feel like everybody has their own unique gifts and abilities.
This one was tough for me. I through my experience of my life, did not really live through that. So I'm having a hard time trying to align with that.
Yeah, he said this. I worked with Joseph, a middle-aged executive who had been a piano prodigy as a child.
Mm-hmm.
He went on to modest success as a professional musician, but then quit music completely because without realizing it, he kept running up against this barrier. Specifically, each time Joseph had a breakthrough to more success, he would be gripped by guilt and end up feeling worse than before. Even after he quit music, the pattern followed him into his business career. And this is what he said. During our first session, we were able to shine a light on the moment in his past when the barrier first got locked into place. Growing up, Joseph had been close to his only sibling, a sister, who was also a gifted musician. She died of leukemia when she was 8 years old, leaving him and his parents devastated. This loss caused him to throw himself even more passionately into his music. For his birthday one year, his parents gave him a grand piano. He was seized with joy and gratitude. He hugged his parents and with tears streaming down his face, sat down at the keyboard. As his fingers were about to touch the keys for the first time, his mother said, "We would never have been able to afford this if your sister hadn't died." Instantly, his joy became suffused with guilt and grief.
Well, then it's just pure association with death. And then it's like, I can, every time I play the piano, it's blame. I almost feel like a sense of responsibility for her death every time I touch the piece of ivory.
And so
it's not ivory anymore, but yeah.
And then he goes into it and says, like you could imagine. So I think this story greatly shows this. So he's like, I can't stop practicing. I have to live up to this pressure of my sister's death.
Yeah, I have to do this for her.
Right.
All the time.
So there's no enjoyment in his art.
It strips the joy out of it. And then the thing that he was truly talented at, he no longer wants to do. I was a rower in college, and I was pretty good at it.
Right.
I spent some time, working with the national team and doing some stuff down at Princeton, and it was always about living up to the expectation that other people had for the sport and how I should be in the sport. So there was never really an enjoyment out of it. It just felt like this laborious task that I was doing for others. Like, you need to do this so you can get into college.
Right.
Yes, I'm physiologically designed to do this thing, and I'm fortunate enough to have a cardiovascular system that works with it, and I pay attention enough to the details to become a good rower. But it wasn't something I wanted to continue with because it really wasn't who I am. Just because I was designed for it and everybody else did it, and like that's how I would pay for their schooling, that's not the expectation that I wanted to live by. And then when I ended it, I felt all these people coming at me with blame, saying this was a stupid idea. What are you doing? This is, you're not thinking it through. But the thing is, it was one of the first real times in my life I took a major step to say, this is who I am, and I know where I want to go, and this is not the path. Even though that path had success in it.
Yes.
Even though that was there, it wasn't the success that truly aligned with my internal growth.
Even if you're good at something, that doesn't mean that you need to walk down that path.
That's precisely correct. Some people are good mercenaries. Doesn't mean they should be killing people all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? But that goes for a lot of things. You may be good at a job doing a specific task, but it's not a job that you love. It doesn't bring you that real enjoyment and internal growth and knowing of who you are.
Yeah, and he says with all four of these, pay attention to when you hit the thermostat hits this upper limit behavior. When you're engaged in these behaviors or upper limiting, you're crimping the flow of positive energy.
Yeah, you stop that flow of positive energy. And I know that he gave an example in the article. Two guys step out of a meeting. And, the meeting ends at a certain time, and one of the coworkers goes up to the guy who gave the presentation, and he said, "You did a fantastic job. Really well done." And then the other guy comes back with a negative comment to say, "No, I wish I had more time. I left a lot out, blah, 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 blah."
Yes, yeah.
The received perception of everyone else was fantastic. And then he is denying this positive flow of energy that is coming to him, and then dropping his self-worth because he had some projected idea of what the outcome should be. So he stopped that flow altogether. So he hit the upper limit, and then he drove it right back down with his own negativity.
Yeah, he can't handle a compliment.
He couldn't handle the compliment. He couldn't absorb the that flow of positiveness. Compliments are great, but for me, when people give me a compliment, fantastic. It's not that I can't handle it. I just don't need it. It's unnecessary. It truly does not. A compliment does not help me evolve.
No, when I get a compliment, for me, it's just thankfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see that they're tracking and recognizing that I'm in my zone of genius.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying? And he talks about that, and we did an episode on that. But it's like, to me, a compliment is just a confirmation. If it's a genuine compliment.
Yeah.
A genuine compliment from somebody, not some bullshit stuff, but a genuine compliment from somebody is, okay, they recognized it, they saw it. I feel like I communicated properly if I got a compliment.
Yeah. And
that guy should have said that. Oh, well, I had studied, I worked on this presentation. It was communicated properly. The message was clear enough that people resonated back to me. So that compliment is not for me to bust my chest up and get egotistical.
Yeah, and that's typically what happens. Like, a lot of people compliment to float egos.
Right.
My ego doesn't need any floating. We all know there's a lot of me going around.
Right. All of us, it's that way.
Yeah, and all of us. And that's typically what compliments end up doing, because we don't dish them out and receive them in a really a truthful format.
Yeah, and he says when you hit the thermostat and you're at this upper limit problem, the number one emotion that you're going to experience is worry.
Yeah.
Worrying is usually a sign that we're upper limiting. It's useful only if it concerns a topic we can actually do something about. Like sitting in traffic and worrying about being late, there's nothing you can do in the traffic. It's out of your control.
At that point, but you could have left earlier.
Yes, you could have looked at Google. If you did not look at Google, if you looked at Google Maps and Google Maps showed green and you were good to go.
Yeah.
But worst case scenario is
car accident. I'm stuck in it.
You're stuck in it, so you need to make a phone call, not sit there and worry. Immediately make a phone call to this person and say, "Hey, there's an accident and I am stuck in traffic. I will immediately text you and let you know. It looks like I'm about 10 or 15 minutes late according to Google Maps, but I'll let you know when I'm in the area."
And then you don't have to worry because you truthfully stated what's going on. The other person could recognize it, and that's just what it is.
And you gave truth.
Yeah.
I mean, you were truthful. Now, if you weren't truthful to yourself, like you said, is that you left late. Mm-hmm. And then you hit traffic because you were thinking, "Oh, I have 15 minutes to get there."
Now you got to call him and be a liar.
Yeah,
because I was irresponsible with my.
That's really big with me. I always like to be like 10 minutes early or whatever. It's like if I'm going to have an important meeting or something. Yeah. I would rather sit in my car, there, screw around on my phone there. Yeah, because I know I'm there, and it makes me feel better. You know?
I like showing up a little bit. I like being fashionably late to the studio.
Oh yeah.
But no, to a meeting. Sometimes to a meeting, I'm an hour early.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm prepping. It's just nice to be there so that I can walk through and be like, you know what, here on time, being responsible, thought it through.
Well, I mean, here it's so flexible, and you got so much shit going on in the morning.
Yeah.
So there's no really set time. We kind
No.
of have like 9-ish, but there's a good way to know if a worry thought is something you should heed. Just ask yourself, is it a real possibility? Is there any action I can take right now to make a positive difference?
That's exactly correct.
So that fits this worry.
You start to move into a state of worry like, whoa, okay, recognize that. That is not correct. Learn from it. Let's go to something positive I can do about this.
Right. And he said, if you're recycling these worries, love that word.
Recycling.
If you're recycling
That's
these
cool.
worries,
I like that.
then
Yeah.
you're getting out of your zone of genius.
Yes, of course you are. You're pushing yourself further and further away from it.
And he said, if you're recycling these worries and you're getting out of your zone of genius, all a worry is for you to be self-aware and pay attention. It's trying to tell you something.
That should be your trigger to be like, wait a minute.
Yes.
Let's reflect for a moment. But instead we just worry. And like that word, tongue, we just slowly spiral out of control into a worse and worse state.
Yeah, and he talks about this. This is interesting. He said, for example, I'm walking down the street of my town and past a jewelry store my wife, Kathleen, and I have bought beautiful pieces over the years. Mm-hmm. I admire some of the pieces in the window. About 15 seconds later, I noticed some worry thoughts about money. You see how it's a trigger.
Interesting triggers.
Yeah.
That's such a funny trigger. Like, me, I really don't like buying things for myself.
Right.
But I enjoy giving people gifts, not on holidays when it's expected. I like unexpected gifts, and I have no problem buying those things or taking care of things. I'd rather spend money on food than go get myself a new pair of shoes. Like, I'm so psyched about a new pair of shoes. Like, the last time I bought something like this was I can't even tell you how long ago. I wear stuff right down to a hole. But it's interesting. We have certain triggers. Like, I get triggered during holidays. Like, I don't want to do this. Is ridiculous, right? Like, why do you have this expectation of a gift? Because everybody's giving gifts? Then you don't value what it is, and it destroys for me. I have strange triggers like that.
Yeah, this is interesting. He said another way we upper limit ourselves is through blame and criticism. When we blame someone or something, we often doing it because we've hit our upper limit and are trying to retard the flow of positive energy. Self-blame is part of the same upper limit pattern as blaming someone else.
Oh, blaming someone else.
It's the same. Blame is blame.
Blame is blame, and that just means you're not taking responsibility for your thoughts and your actions.
Blame is lame.
Blame is lame.
So I once coached a billionaire. So this guy's a billionaire. That's a lot of freaking money.
So he's materially, successful.
Yeah, because he often bugged his wife because she bought the most expensive brand of toilet paper. This guy's a billionaire, and she buys the most expensive brand of toilet paper.
Yeah. And he's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, and so she said, he goes, I asked him to get out a calculator. So Gay said this is awesome. He said, I asked him to get out a calculator and figure out the actual cost of toilet paper, and his wife went on a binge and bought 100 rolls a day for the next 50 years. He punched in the numbers and came up with a cost of, her lifelong extravagant $1.5 million.
So $1.5 million
if she bought, every day 100 rolls of this expensive toilet paper.
Okay.
I asked him how much his net worth varied from day to day due to ordinary stock market fluctuations. He said that it would sometimes vary by as much as 100 million from hour to hour.
Yeah, isn't that great? And he's honestly wigging out. First of all, it's unnecessary what the wife is doing, but he's wigging out disproportionately because he has some sort of trigger in his life that's, saying, don't do that. Stop buying that. You're wasting money.
Yeah, and he said, I pointed out that even if his wife bought 1,000 rolls a day, it still wouldn't amount to a single day's fluctuation.
Yeah.
He said, given that, he told this billionaire this, what's the real reason you're criticizing your wife?
That's right.
We discovered that deep down, he didn't feel that he deserved to be wealthy and loved. He'd grown up in a wealthy family, and his parents constantly bickered about money. He was carrying out that tradition in his own marriage.
Yeah, he was. He was playing it out in his head and then projecting it towards his wife with the relationship.
And so a year later, this guy worked on this work. A year later, he had this Gay hadn't seen them in a year. They come back to his office, his wife and this guy. He said literally they looked 10 years younger.
Amazing.
It's just that everyday constant bickering about money.
And he was recycling that same worry in the head over and over and over and over. That wears you down. That's that oxidative stress. It destroys you internally.
Well, I think for people that are wanting money or money, everybody is always worrying about what they don't have instead of being grateful and thankful for what they do have.
This sounds ridiculous, and people, cool, Maslow's. You have a roof on your head.
Yes.
You have oxygen to breathe, access to water, and a grocery store 5 minutes down the road. What else? and you got a bed to sleep in. And all you really need to sleep is the ground and your arm as a pillow.
Yes.
At the end of the day, and I'm using your term, at the end of the day, that is all.
Right.
Because you go to sleep at the end of the day.
Yeah. And this next one, which I love, is deflection. And we talked about this earlier.
Deflection.
And this is what messed up our whole intro on our first one. But you mentioned that presentation that he deflects the compliment.
Yeah, deflects a compliment.
Deflection keeps the pot of energy from landing, being received, and being acknowledged. The art of getting beyond our upper limit problem has a lot to do with developing an ability and willingness to feel and appreciate natural good feelings.
Yeah. What's that old the saying that kids say? I'm rubber and you're glue.
Yes.
Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. Well, I'm going to say positive things all day and remain that glue.
Yeah, and this is interesting. He talks about this. It's about false feelings that we go through with sugar, alcohol, and short-term fixes.
Yeah, because you think about
naturally feeling good.
Think about you like just from like a blood sugar standpoint, right?
Right.
I really got to get that quick fix. I'm low on energy today, but that's what you're used to doing, is getting a Band-Aid, getting that shot of sugar or heroin or whatever that thing might be for you. But what you realize that, well, what's causing me to feel like I need to get that immediately?
Yes.
And then I come back and I'm like, keep dumping the sugar in my body. This is not really helping me. I got to look deeper.
Yeah. And speaking about physical, he talks about when we get sick, he goes, really, if you'll go back and look at when you get sick, it's probably when you're approaching something major happen and you approach some upper limit boundary.
I did. When I got sick with COVID, I was approaching an upper limit of work and, mental things that were going on that I was moving through. And that's when it just nailed me.
Yeah.
Even though I was eating healthy, sleeping, doing all these things, that's when it got to me. When I was at that point.
Yeah. And so when it's just interesting, he says, ask yourself during or just after a big win in business or a period of good times in a relationship, you'll get sick. Isn't that funny?
Because there's so much energy and everything like that. And when you're recovering from the positive event, because it requires a lot of energy from you, you can be worn down. And so that's when you can get hit with whatever that sickness might be. So you just got to be aware.
So everyone that's in a relationship, whatever type of relationship you have, whether it's with parents, your partner, whoever it may be, arguments. This is going to be a really big one. So I want to help you there. Arguments also bring you down when you hit your upper limit. Arguments often are caused by two people racing to occupy the victim position in the relationship. Once the race for the victim position is underway, each person must find some way to out-victim the other rather than find room for compromise.
Yeah. Well, I did this and you did this, but I did this more than you did.
Yes.
Okay.
Think how stupid that makes you sound.
Yeah. I just generalized that's how an argument works.
Right.
But that's the new form of argument. If you go back to argument during Stoicism, it had nothing to do with that. It was trying to figure out what's the logic of something. But now it's just a function of
pure emotion.
Just slamming it into one another, and me slamming into the mic that has a springs on it and does that. It's that ego just beating each other up. And it's like, whose ego is going to be less hurt?
Yeah.
Which ego comes out on top, rather than stopping for a second, not being the victim and saying, okay, I hear you. I understand. I was acting irrationally. I probably should have approached it a different way. But that takes a lot of practice to find that reason, especially in relationships when you get in arguments, because there's so much emotional energy between the two people. And so you really have to understand one another and check yourself hard.
Yeah, even if you have to leave for a little bit or go for a drive or something.
Yeah.
Get out, think about it. Think how you can articulate. Once again, like we talked about in the last episode, when you need to talk to your parents. Think about what you're going to say, logically articulate it out. Come with humility, number one. See where your ego's butting up against this. And then take 100% responsibility for the problem and solve it.
Yeah.
You're the person that can solve this. If you come in, I don't rely on, if we get in an argument, Alex, I'm not going to rely on how you respond, one, and I'm not going to rely on if it goes favorable or not towards you. I'm not waiting. I'm not being reactive and waiting on the response.
No, I'm
going to come to you and I'm going to have I'm going to be honest with humility.
Yeah.
And then from there, I came in truth.
That's correct.
And I prepared what I was going to say to you. Other than that, I can't perceive how you're going to take that.
You're proactive with your emotions and your thoughts.
Right.
That's an awesome way to do it.
But I'm not going to base my emotions or feelings on how you respond after I said what I needed to say, after I gave you truth.
You've thought through what needs to be said.
Yes.
That's just what it is.
But you don't need to be logical and cold-hearted. There needs to be, start off a conversation with this way. I love you.
Yeah.
I care about you. I care about this relationship. I'm sorry, I did this, this, and this wrong. I should not have acted like this, this, and this. I want to take steps to not bring up old shit from the past, like we do in arguments. I want to stop that. And I want to see if we could sit down together without all this crazy emotion and see if we can solve it and fix this, especially for the things that I've done and how you feel that you're feeling loved.
Yeah. And, logic is a tough thing in arguments. It's not necessarily cold, but when you consider sequences of events.
Yes. Let's think, if somebody's yelling at you and you think, let's think logically about this. Dude, they're going to be like, fuck off.
That's when they flip out. But what you're doing is you really got to round down to what the truth is.
Yes.
Got to boil it down. And it's not an unloving, disheartening thing. And it's not typically cold. The truth can become warming once it becomes understood. Mm-hmm. But when you go with the logic and rationale in the middle of an argument, people they flare up.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, huge. And it's not that you're trying to be offensive to them or, say that what they're saying has no value, but those emotions haven't been thought through.
Yeah, and I've had this before, but if I'm here's where I found my ego hits in a mysterious, not mysterious because I recognize it, but it comes in let's say I'm getting an argument with somebody, I will play the teacher and they're the student.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm coming at like I'm greater than, and I'm talking down to. Even though I may be using all this spiritual lingo, logic and stuff, but I'm not looking at us on an evil plane, on an even plane, even playing field.
Yeah, that happens with me a lot.
Right.
I'm not going to deny that. And my tone will change.
Yeah.
Into almost like this teaching tone.
It's like a defensive mechanism.
Yeah, I'm not trying to I'm real in my heart. Seriously. I'm not trying to be condescending at all. And like the pace of my tonal thing, because I'm trying to slow my thoughts down from being emotional, and I'm trying to move into that teaching stance.
Right.
But that really it backfires a lot.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, it backfires a lot.
People feel that. They feel like, and they'll say, especially if they have an upper limit problem or something, they're like, instantly he thinks he's better than me.
Yeah,
or he has all the answers.
That's exactly what I mean. But it's not. And I always want to bring it back to a learning moment.
Yes.
Teach, learn, teach. But it blows up in my face a lot. Because a lot of people don't share that same perspective.
If you come at it in that way, then if you come at that, I mean, we've had situations multiple times where we've talked about things. It's never gotten into a heated argument. No. But we've had situations where we had to communicate where there could have been emotion either way.
Yeah.
And but we have this understanding of, there's different roles. Sometimes I'll learn from you. Sometimes you learn from me.
Correct.
It's that teach learn. It helps tremendously because then it's now, but I value you as a person. I respect you. And so when you say something, I want to listen and hear what you have to say.
That's
because
right.
I don't know what's going on in your head. So I want to know your perspective. Mm-hmm. So if I truly respected my partner, my wife, my husband, if I truly respected that, then I want to stop and listen.
Yeah.
And ask questions because I want to find out what they're actually feeling. Yeah. And I need to get into the root of why are they so emotionally upset?
Yeah.
Why? What's the root of that?
You're precisely correct. Sometimes I get hammered on people, or even like my own relationship sometimes when I listen and I don't respond right away.
Yes.
Because I really want to think about it. Because I can say things back real quick with a lot of fire. And that's just, I don't want to pour more kerosene on something that doesn't have to be there.
That's a good analogy.
I have learned to stop myself, and I'm like, maybe, sometimes I have to remove myself to build up the proper perspective, to come back into this and be like, wow, I've thought this through. Because when we get into those emotional states, we want to just hammer back and forth.
Right.
It's
like those Rock'em Sock'em robots. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you push them
until the head pops up.
Yeah. Until the head pops up.
But that's what we do. We're just like wailing on each other. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Let's just stop for a second. Yeah. We're truly in the heat of the moment. And so one of my things I've really stopped to do is I listen. Mm-hmm. And I'm really trying to think through because people all see the world in a different light. And I'm really trying to hear it from the other person's side and perceive it like that. I have such a strange way of thinking anyway. So when I hear how other people think, I'm like, what the hell? You know what I mean? But I have to really take that time. That is one thing I have to slow down and process for a bit.
There's two words that I learned, especially in leadership training, with coaching especially, is to say what else. So you ask a question and then you say what else. Like, what's really bothering you about this? And then they go on and on and on for whatever. And what else? Yeah. And usually that what else answer, the second answer, is usually the root.
It's usually the root of what it truly is. They'll hit you with all this other stuff, beat around the bush,
right, and
then go to it. Or I always follow up with the question. I'm like, does that make sense?
Right.
After they agree, and then I'm like, but does that make sense? And then you start to hear the person unravel for what the true thoughts are.
Right.
You really got to continue to carry that energy forward.
Yeah, because people come at me like people that know me. I would say my closest friends and stuff, they'll come for me for advice a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But I could do something wrong and they just kind of excuse it. But I've had a few times where, we had a situation, you and I, where you come to me and confronted me on it.
I called you out.
And it was awesome. But I think majority of the time we're just moving and thinking and just creating our world. Yeah. That there's just fire behind us.
That's what it is.
There's just fields on fire.
Everything's just burning behind us. Like, chill out, Napoleon.
We don't know the...
You weren't paying attention to the cause and the world of law of cause and effect.
Yes, yeah.
At all.
No,
you were just like, fuck it, I'm going to do whatever I want. You know what I mean?
There's 20 dead bodies behind me. Yeah. That's fine emotionally.
Look at all the lives I've destroyed. All the relationships I've left to burn.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so then that's a cause of self-reflection. So this is a great book. This Gay Hendricks, he has a lot of stuff on relationships too. Mm-hmm. I think he's in his 70s or 80s. Him and his wife have been married forever. So they just have a great foundation, and it's very practical.
What happens when you reach the upper limit of your age?
We need to have him on the podcast and ask him.
We got to get him quick.
Yeah.
I'm
going to send this to him and say, you need to.
He's not going to be feeling too gay in a couple of years.
Isn't that funny how that word changed?
Yeah.
In the English. Yeah. Now, which is awesome, but it was happy before.
Yeah.
If you would read old books and they say, we're gay. Yeah, we're happy. That's what that meant.
We are. Yeah. You bet. I got to look at the etymology of it.
I don't know. Is it cool to say things are gay nowadays? Like, cause I know things like, we used to say that as kids, like that's gay, like your sweatshirt's gay, or
and
that shirt's gay.
That was us being offensive,
or your shoe,
That was us completely being so offensive and not respecting other people.
Yeah,
and their choices.
But you remember that we used to say we had all these vocabulary that we said as little kids.
It was so
not just swear words, but like like I know, like in Halloween now, dressing up like a Native American. How many times did we do cowboy and Indian?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we're like shooting Indians.
And then I think to myself, is it offensive for me to dress up like a wizard or an extraterrestrial?
Yeah. To them, is that offensive?
Yeah, is that offensive? You know what I mean? And I'm some lonely, unevolved human.
I never thought about it. It's like the cowboy and Indian things. I never thought about that. It's like, but now when you think about it, that's so horrific.
Do you know how many poor people got scalped?
Yeah. Think about the whole idea of, if somebody dressed up like a World War II.
That's like saying, someone dresses up a Nazi and then we have someone dressing up like, someone hanging out in a ghetto.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one person screaming at the other, you're like, oh my gosh, is this like actually happening? In the
same set, I am glad we're kind of becoming more conscious of our past and the mistakes that we made. And we can learn from them.
It's great. I am so thankful, and nothing's a mistake.
Yes.
Nothing is ever a mistake.
This is important.
Your past and what you've done, if you reflect on it and you can actually internalize that knowledge, nothing was a mistake. Even if the outcome may have been perceived as negative, or could have caused some harm, nothing was truly a mistake, because now it's driven you through paying attention to it to a point of, evolution of your life. I get it. There's no such thing as sin. There's just error, and we make errors. And through errors, we continue to refine who we are. That continues to mold us and polish us and refine our consciousness, our thoughts, everything about our world. It's looking at those errors, recognizing them, and recognizing them enough that we don't commit those errors again. That's what it is.
Yeah, I know you brought up sin, and that's a word in Christianity, but the Apostle Paul in the scriptures, he talked about sin. Actually, it's a Greek word. It means missing the mark in archery.
Yeah, missing the mark.
Right.
There's an error in your
Right.
accuracy.
Yeah.
That's what it's all boiling down to.
But we think it's like this definite thing that is
You're
evil
born
and
with
bad.
it, and you got to repent your entire life, and like all this other stuff. And it's like,
What a
come
trap.
on.
What a trap.
It's a total trap. It keeps you in the worry state, the fear, anxiety, guilt
Yeah,
state.
fight or flight.
You're
I'm going to hell.
you're always in the resistance of the upper limit. The second you're born, you're limited. Thanks a lot, Vatican. Right?
I think a lot of churches,
Yeah. We're spiraling.
religion. Yeah,
This
let's
isn't.
get out of
This is
here.
a dogmatic spiral.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
See ya.